When I first started this speech, I had a completely different speech a week ago, and it has completely changed since then because my teacher said I should change it. So, I did not know what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to rewrite it. I was really struggling with what I was supposed to accomplish with my speech, and I was just struggling with how I should write it. And I felt like no ideas were coming to me. I felt like it was just the end of the world, honestly. But my teacher told me I needed to pray about it. And I was like, that's such cliche. But I did. And once I prayed about it, that same night I was at my church practicing for worship. And I had this incredible moment where I experienced God's presence for the first time. And immediately after this experience, I knew that this was what I had to write about. And so I wanted to kind of describe that moment that I felt. And that's how I'm going to start this presentation today. So when I was on stage, I closed my eyes and everything went totally dark. It was like a very peaceful and calm darkness that I was just completely enraptured by God, and I felt like He was physically there with me. There was such a wave of peace and joy as I stood there. I started jumping up and down and just praising God. It was a very surreal experience. And I was just listening to the gentleness of the piano and the guitar and the reverberations throughout the whole room. Everything was just clicking together, and it was so enrapturing. And as I stood there singing, I imagined myself, just me and God together. And whether I'm leading the congregation in song or I'm out in the crowd, I just have this incredible feeling of want to pursuing worship with God. Sometimes I'll cry, other times I'll dance, and most times I'll raise my hands in the air when I worship. I can so easily give up every problem, every burden up to God when I'm worshiping. Which, by the way, is very hard for me to do. Worship to me is unlike any other experience, and it's a time when I can truly feel myself connecting with Jesus on a more personal level. It's strange, honestly, how the second I close my eyes, everything else seems to disappear. Like I can physically see myself standing there with God, and it's just surreal. I become very emotional. I'm kind of emotional right now about it. But I realized that this only happened to me, that emotional connection, on Sunday mornings. I wanted it to extend throughout my week, and it ended after the sermon ended. So I wanted to explore the idea of worshiping outside of church. I ended up not trying to really worship outside of it, and I realized that there are so many ways that I can worship God through my passions and through my talents. And same for everyone else. We can worship God in unique ways other than only music. I ended up being able to let go of my anxieties and my burdens and routines of the week, and so I get to continue doing that through something I love the most, which is art. I didn't have a very strong desire to be in ministry, but I felt like it was the right thing to do as a Christian was to be in ministry. So I ended up neglecting my love for art for a while. I just thought maybe I should do something else if art doesn't make me much money, whatever. And so I tried to pursue ministry. It didn't end up being something I really wanted, but it felt like I should as a Christian. And I realized that art was the passion I had to go after and I had to keep working toward. But for a long time, I struggled to bridge these two passions, art and worship, together. And during Capstone, it hit me how I needed to bridge those two passions for me. I realized that when I paint and when I take time to draw, I feel close to Jesus as much as I do when I worship through song. When I'm creating this really good piece of work, I I end up praising God. I'm like, wow, I'm so talented. Or like, thanks for giving me the desire to do this. It just makes me so happy, and I just want to praise God for giving me that love. And so I had this picture of worship that it was only on stage with all the lights and the music. I always thought that it could only be in church. But the definition of worship is the feeling or expression or reverence and adoration for a deity or God. I've asked a lot of people what their definition was, and 9 out of 10 people often say that it's the songs before each sermon and the songs after the sermon. They don't really connect that they can do it elsewhere. But I slowly realized that art is how I best worship Jesus. I've grown up around incredibly talented artists my entire life. I've had such a passion for art and for creativity because of my family. A lot of these are my uncles, cousins, parents, great-great-grandparents, and they have just heavily influenced me. And because of my background and my family's background, I've had such an incredible passion for art. And every time I see something new that my family has, I just want to pursue it even more. And one person I am very heavily influenced by is my dad. My dad is the reason why I love art so much. I'm very passionate because of my dad, and I wouldn't love art as much as I do without him. And I worship God best when I am with my dad. I just get super excited to create when I'm around him, and I worship God best because he teaches me and he helps me grow as a person and as an artist, and it just makes me so happy to be around him. And so he's definitely been one of my largest influences in my life through art and through the things that I love and through my career and just as a dad. But something that I've realized is that I just love to share with people my love for art. And so my friends and family can't really escape me showing them all the things that I draw in my processes. I think I showed this one to my friend like 5 times in the process of actually making it because I loved doing it so much. And they don't really have a choice. So, but there's something so good in having such a deep passion that you want to share it with everyone around you. But I've noticed that people tend to hide their passions and their loves because they don't believe people will be interested and really care about it. And that just like really hurts me that they want to hide it because they don't believe that people will care. They neglect it because they don't believe that there is a way that God could use their loves and their talents for his kingdom, and so they neglect it. That is why there are so many Christians in ministry who only do it because they feel like it's the right thing to do. 95% of Christian jobs when searched for online are strictly in ministry, and people don't really realize that they can have a Christian job outside of church. And it's such a common misconception, and it's not true. To speak to this claim, my mom and my stepmom, they are both incredible people. My mom's a really talented interior designer, and my stepmom is a really amazing marketing director. This is my mom and my stepmom. They've been able to, or they are super talented. My mom is the best in Colorado right now for interior design, and she would not have gotten where she is without my stepmom. And it's pretty crazy, my mom and stepmom together, but that's another story for another time. But they have been able to minister into people's lives because of their jobs. My mom has gone into homes and to families, and she's designed their homes, but she's been able to speak into their lives and minister to them and grow deep personal connections with people everywhere surrounding work. Same with Kristen. They've both been able to just minister in people's lives. And by pursuing their passions and the things that they love, they've been able to reach people who otherwise wouldn't have been reached. God intentionally gave us the talents and interests we have to further his kingdom, which leads into my next point. Your God-given gifts are no mistake. This is some of my mom's work. But I read a book called The 8 Great Smarts by Kathy Cook. I got to meet her over the summer, and she's just a really brilliant person. I cannot recommend it enough. It is a book for parents, but it ended up being very insightful in my own life. She claims that every person is equally smart, just in very different ways. When we think of being smart, we often think of being book smart. And that is not the only intelligence, is what she claims. There is word smart, logic smart, picture smart, music smart, self smart, people smart, body smart, and nature smart. I, for example, am heavily picture smart and music smart. I really love just the designs and colors, and I can see visually different things that need to be changed or what would look best. It's just like it comes natural, whereas someone who does math, that doesn't come natural, and math doesn't come natural to me. That someone who does math, they're most likely logic smart. And then for music, I can just hear when a note is played wrong. I can pick up harmonies. It's just very natural to me. And so I realized, though, that I can't focus on music well unless the visual aspect is really good, or I close my eyes. So that's one thing why I love worship in church so much, is because the music is coupled with my love for art. And so when I'm actively pursuing both things at the same time, I just experience things on a higher level, and I can experience God better because I'm actively pursuing those things. That's why I believe doing your passions and the things that you love are used for glorifying God. And so thank you, Kathy Cook, for giving me that awareness and understanding that I'm smart in my own way. I didn't first recognize that I could worship through my talents, but once I did, it definitely changed everything. As my final point, I wanted to tell you that it's not always easy to connect with God right off the bat with your talents and with worship. It can be a long process, but it's very worth it. To speak to this claim, I initially went into Capstone with the intention of becoming an art teacher. It had been my hope for a very long time to be an art teacher, and during Capstone I realized that that was not the best way for me to worship God, whereas it is for other people. But I worship God better when I just create, and I just take time to paint or draw, sing, and not exactly teach. So I did a J term with my friend Sophie Dudas, and we led a week-long class where we could teach writing and art to our students. And we thought we were super prepared. We had everything together. We had tea and snacks. We had these journals for all the kids. We set the mood lighting. We had jazzy music. It was pretty exciting, honestly. We were very prepared, or so we thought. When the students actually came, it was a very different story. We ended up being very nervous. I think we also made the students very nervous because we were there like, oh yeah, it's going to be great. And we're like, oh, are you sure? Because it was bad. But over that week, we were able to get it to be a lot better, and we started getting into the groove of it. But we both realized that was not what we wanted to do. And we did not want to teach. And so, though there were many unforeseen challenges, it was a lot of fun. It just wasn't our best way to worship God. But once I realized my form of worship was just to create, I ended up becoming a lot freer from anxiety and fear. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. There we go. I used to struggle a lot with anxiety. It felt like a very physical pain, like my heart was very physically heavy. and my fears were very out of control. I would stay up through nights just worrying and very scared of what was to come in the future. It was very debilitating, and I didn't think there was ever a way out. And then that's when I realized, because of Capstone, that my cure was worship. I realized that I did not have anxiety when I was in church. I didn't have anxiety when I was singing songs of praise. I didn't have anxiety when I was creating and doing art. And so I realized that by worshiping God, that was my cure and my escape. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm definitely feeling anxiety right now. But I have definitely been a lot freer from it, and I don't experience it at all like I once did. It's very rare now, and that just speaks to God and how He can use something like these things that I love to heal. I wanted to speak to God being intentional with what He gave us. He did not accidentally give you a passion, and He did not accidentally give you something that you love so that you could waste it and slander it. These passions have the power to minister. They have the power to worship Jesus better and to build better relationships with people around us and with God. We are expected to grow in these desires and build them on a foundation of our faith rather than do what we are told by the world. It sometimes takes a very long time to figure out how you best worship God. It took me 18 years. But I have found joy even in trials and tribulations because of these things that I love. My family and I, we've been having a lot of loss and stress recently. And through it all, I've still been able to experience a lot of joy and happiness. And I can only owe that to the way that I worship. Worship is not confined to a box. It takes many shapes and forms and is unique to each individual person. Musical worship is very impactful. It is what first prompted me toward worshiping God better and through my art. But some people don't worship that way, and people don't understand that sometimes. I've had people come to me and say they don't feel like they're a good enough Christian when the worship on stage doesn't connect to them and they don't feel God through it. And it's not because you're a bad Christian, it's just because you worship in a totally different way. And sometimes it takes time to figure out what that way is. It takes a lot of endurance, and I implore you to keep working and keep fighting for figuring out how you best worship God, and that thing is that you truly, truly love. We do not worship the same, and so I wanted to end with a simple question. Oh my goodness, I skipped something else again. Okay. My final question for you is, what is your creative way to worship God? Thank you.